Welcome to everyone that's able to join us here this afternoon. If you do know of someone that would be interested in today's presentation but is unable to attend, those worksheets will be available, as will the presentation and the recording. It would be useful to gain a bit of feedback in terms of perhaps some of the content people would like to see. So if there's any particular areas that you'd like us to focus on for today's presentation, please do send a message to Sarah and she'll let me know if there's specific areas of interest that you'd like us to discuss this afternoon. As Sarah mentioned, my name's Alex Makin. I'm the Managing Director of Syneka Marketing. And today's presentation is about looking at your marketing outcomes, looking at your marketing objectives, and determining the best marketing approach, the strategies, and the actions that could potentially be used within your business or organisation. To begin, we have a series of polls just to help us gain a little bit more about your experiences with marketing. So perhaps, Sarah, if we look at the first poll and determine the role that people have within an organisation.
Great, so if everyone would like to select either A, B, C or D, whichever suits them best. If you do select E, it'll be great if you could type in the other role that you represent within the messages box so we can take a look at that. And we can see the responses coming through now and we'll share them in a moment. We've actually got a comment from Jill as well saying all of the above, and I think that represents a few people out there. Great, and we've got the majority of the responses, so I'm going to close the poll and share the results. And Alex, there you go.
Fabulous. Excellent. Thank you for responding to that poll. We're going to have a second poll a bit later on when we discuss social media as a potential marketing channel for your organisation. So today's presentation will begin by looking at the overall marketing strategy within your organisations and then delving into some of the tools that could potentially be used. And specifically in this presentation, we're looking at, as one of those tools, social media, given that social media is an area that many businesses and organisations are currently exploring to determine whether it's the right path for them. But firstly, a bit about Syneka Marketing. We develop marketing plans, social media strategies, website design, and professional speaking services. We target businesses, starting with new business startups, small businesses, medium businesses, as well as larger enterprises. The not-for-profit sector, where we tend to be a market leader in developing solutions for the not-for-profit sector, particularly not-for-profit organisations that are going through significant change and significant development and are looking at growing their organisation into the next phase of engaging their clients, stakeholders and volunteers. As well as also local government, where we provide services to both local councils as well as also councillors and candidates seeking election through social media tools and blogging. A bit about the team at Syneka Marketing. I formed the company in 2009 and in 2010 I'm a current serving councillor for the City of Maroondah. In 2010 I served as the Mayor of Maroondah City Council, so almost had to keep the business in hiatus. Wasn't able to grow the business given the mayoral commitments. So it's really been this year and last year that we've been able to grow and establish Syneka Marketing. So as myself as a Managing Director, Natalia Pereira, who's our Creative Director, who provides guidance on social media, on the visuals and design of websites, as well as creativity in terms of offline marketing as well. Keith Chu, who's one of our marketing consultants, and he's an expert in providing marketing strategy, marketing planning. Keith has had extensive experience with some of our big name brands, including Nike, IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and Kevin Caroline, who understands has actually done a webinar for Redback previously. Kevin is a specialist in membership growth and retention. A bit about myself. As Sarah mentioned, I have a background in marketing and IT. Worked in a number of different small, medium businesses, as well as also not-for-profit organisations, both within a management capacity, but also in terms of board capacity as well. And I'm a current board member of a number of organisations, including community houses, environmental groups, and volunteer-based organisations. Current serving councillor for Maroondah City Council. I was first elected in 2005 and was re-elected in 2008. And as I mentioned before, I served as Mayor during 2010. That photo on the right, and it's often one that I discuss when I sum up the mayoral experience, is a photo involving myself and the mayors from a number of different municipalities across Melbourne. Maroondah includes, for those of you that may not be familiar with Maroondah, includes the outer eastern suburbs of Melbourne, specifically Ringwood and Croydon. And Ringwood is a suburb that's been identified as experiencing high density development. It's a state government policy to encourage higher intensity development, higher growth within the centre of Ringwood. One of our drawbacks has been the inaccessible public transport in Ringwood, specifically Ringwood Station, which doesn't meet disability compliance standards. It's difficult for one council alone to advocate on behalf of its community and to get the attention it needs, particularly in a state election year. So one of the approaches I took was working with the mayors of other councils that had these higher growth suburbs to work together across Melbourne, covering Melbourne's north, west, south and the city of Melbourne itself, to advocate jointly for the needs of our cities and the needs for the state government at the time to provide financial assistance in the form of actually providing funding commitments with their policy commitments. And that was a very successful alliance. It was a novel approach for Melbourne at the time. Typically, local government worked on geographical boundaries, but never worked on common issues. This was an alliance on common issues, and one where we very successfully promoted the marketing message of the fact that if the government wants these central activity areas, if it wants high density development in those central areas, we need the investment as well. And that brings us to what we're actually looking at in terms of today's presentation. As I mentioned, we're going to begin by looking at what is marketing, looking at marketing within your business or your not-for-profit organisation, some of the steps in how we develop a marketing plan, looking at the role of the internet in marketing, given that many organisations do look at the internet as a potential marketing channel, delving into some of the specifics around social media tools, and obviously concluding. As I mentioned before, if there's any particular topics of interest, please do let me know and we can address those a bit more specifically as well. I want to begin with, I guess, the definition around what is marketing. And there's, marketing is one of those words that tends to be bandied around a fair bit, with very little actually being held to the true essence of what is marketing. Up there we have on the screen, we have the textbook definition of marketing. And basically being the process of determining the planning, the concepts, the pricing, the promotion of your goods and services to meet the needs of your customers. That's the very textbook definition, and it's worth actually breaking that down into what it actually means. That definition, by the way, was provided by the American Marketing Association and is often used by the Australian Marketing Institute and other marketing bodies within Australia. But basically, marketing considers how products and services can reach your desired target market. So it's about having your products and services and looking at how you can reach the people that you want to target. So you need to consider who is your target market and why are they your target market? What products or services are relevant to that target market? Who the competitors are in that space? Are there lots of competitors? Are there a few competitors? Are they offering similar products or services to you? Is there a point of difference that you can promote? And how do you actually look at reaching that target market? You could have the best product or service out there, but if very few people know about it, it makes it difficult to actually connect with those customers. And bearing in mind, of course, that you may have multiple target markets. You may have one product, and in our example, it's the blogging for counsellors that meets one target market, but our small business packages meet another target market. So it's worth looking at, even if your products and services are similar, who those target markets actually are. Might check with Sarah to see if there's any questions or feedback so far before we look at some of the specific examples around marketing.
No, Alex, we're fine just to keep going.
Fabulous. So let's begin by looking at what marketing currently exists within your business. And obviously there's a number of different channels that are available to promote your organisation and to promote its objectives. Websites, social media are one of the key, or one of the marketing channels that are often communicated. Brochures and leaflets are another. More traditional forms of marketing. Meetings, information sessions are particularly popular in the not-for-profit sector. Networking events are really popular, particularly around business-to-business type firms that are promoting their products and services to other businesses. Sponsorship is another. Businesses that actually provide sponsorship to other organisations. That is a form of marketing. It's important that you get some feedback in terms of that sponsorship. And looking at the basics around telephone and email correspondence. Every form of communication that you have is a form of marketing. If someone contacts you via phone, drops into your office, sends you an email, the way you respond to that discussion, the way you respond to that inquiry is a form of marketing. It's very important, particularly in service-based firms and in the not-for-profit sector, that you ensure that your telephone service, email correspondence has the same image that you want to project as part of your organisation. And obviously there's many others. They're some of the most common elements looking at marketing. When you look at the marketing within your organisation, you should begin with a marketing plan. And the marketing plan is a document that supports the vision that you have for your business. So it's about identifying the objectives that you want to achieve through that vision, and the outlines, the actions that you fulfil those objectives. So it's a marketing plan that supports your business plan. It's a marketing plan that really provides the next level of detail in terms of where you see the business going forward, or where you see your organisation going forward. While quite a few businesses, not-for-profit organisations develop a business plan, there's still quite a few that have a gap in terms of their marketing plan. So the business plan looks at the capabilities of your organisation, where you wish the organisation to go into the future. The marketing plan starts to look at the why and the how and the where, looking at how the tools available to enact or fulfil that vision. And like any documents, any strategic documents, they do need to be regularly reviewed. You want to make sure that you're able to measure the progress towards implementing your plans and to check the measure of success to actually make sure that you are achieving what you set out to achieve. As I mentioned, it's about placing marketing in the context of your organisation. So a marketing plan should support the other plans in your business. Now, depending on the size of your business, will depend as to how many of those plans you actually have developed. But typically there'll be an HR plan, distribution plans if you're reselling products, and they should all support your marketing plan, and your marketing plan should support those other documents. It's very important that there is that synergy between those documents. Marketing is about ensuring that you're able to achieve that vision for your business and that you're able to facilitate the implementation of those other strategic documents. And obviously out of a marketing plan, you'll have elements like e-marketing, looking at the social media and internet, as well as communications and looking at how you actually communicate, potentially PR as well as another offshoot of your marketing plan. So on the marketing plan itself, there'll be various sort of sub-plans, if you like, or communication plans that look at how you actually implement each of those tools. And obviously, all those plans do need to be aligned. You need to ensure that you have that consistent vision, those consistent goals, and that's what you're seeking to achieve. It's worth looking at the planning process, so looking at how we actually develop a marketing plan. And I often find many organisations do look at a SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis, looking at your strengths and weaknesses, those that are internal to your organisation, and your external opportunities and threats, does help form a bit of a basis for a marketing plan. It allows you to put in some of the initial foundations that you can then develop as part of your marketing plan. And in particular, it's worth looking at your strengths, because these are the things that you do well as a business or organisation. They're typically your established abilities, they're the core aspects of your business, and they're the areas that you can develop to provide a competitive advantage. What you want to do through the marketing process is leveraging your strengths. even if you're looking at a new product or service, you do want to leverage the strengths of your organisation to help promote any new products or services or offerings that you're developing. And out of those strengths should come your key marketing messages. On the right, I've got an example using our own firm, Syneka Marketing. So one of our strengths is our diverse experiences. We're able to cover the SME sector, small, medium enterprises, the not-for-profit sector, and of course local government. And the fact that we understand strategy, we specialise in the strategy and can develop some of the tools for implementation. But we ensure that we come in with that cohesive and holistic vision for an organisation. And of course, one of the emerging trends, being social media, is the fact that we do have knowledge in that area. And we have dedicated team members who are specialising in social media. Of course, if we're looking at a not-for-profit organisation, their strengths will be quite different. And one of the examples I often use is Eastern Volunteers, a volunteer resource centre located in Melbourne's eastern suburbs. One of their key strengths is networking. Given that they provide volunteer recruitment, they have a network of community organisations that they refer volunteers to, as well as also a network of volunteers that seek those volunteer opportunities. So they're a heavily networked organisation, and one whose real strength is that ability to leverage those networks to reach a high concentration of organisations that are highly connected with Eastern Volunteers. And in their case, we've been able to develop partnerships with the local leader newspapers and Swinburne University, looking specifically at the networking aspect as a real strength of the organisation. Once you've looked at your strengths, you need to look at who the target market actually is. So you want to get, firstly, the demographic data. Who are they? Looking at why you're targeting them. How do you reach them? And where are they actually located? Now, that target market could be individuals, it could be groups of people, it could be other organisations or businesses. But you do want to ensure that you do clearly define your target market and identify why you're actually reaching them. You want to connect the target market to your strengths. So in the case of Eastern Volunteers, they're a regional organisation. They cover 3 local government areas and in Melbourne's outer eastern suburbs. So the capacity for them to reach large national corporations is limited. A national corporation, your Optuses, your Telstras, will be looking for a high-profile not-for-profit organisation. But a regional type business, say community banks through Bendigo Community Bank, or a business that targets, or an entity that targets the local population, there is immense benefit for, particularly with the strength being networking. So Swinburne University, which draws its prospective students from the local population, was a suitable target to form a business relationship with. Once you connect your target, once you connect your target market, once you identify your strengths, you're able to create that value proposition and look at what that actual strength is. And on the other side, looking at Syneka Marketing, we have a number of target markets. So looking at businesses, obviously businesses seeking growth, not-for-profit organisations. We target incorporated associations that are looking at that ongoing growth and that ongoing establishment. Your strategies ultimately are what builds up your organisation. Once you've looked at your target markets and your strengths, it's time to then look at establishing your key messages. And that's where consistency ultimately is critical. Once you develop a key message, that needs to be the message that you promote. It needs to relate back to your brand and needs to demonstrate the benefits that you provide. You need to anticipate how the target market would potentially belong. SMEs, there's been a question about what the term SME means, and that means small and medium enterprises. So small and medium businesses, businesses that tend to be relatively new and are looking at ongoing growth. As part of your key messages, you want to demonstrate tangible value. So it's demonstrating value to your target market. Why are they going to buy your products or services? If you're a community organisation, why are they going to partner with you above others that are in the marketplace. That's the value that you're able to provide, built on your strengths and reinforced by your key messages. So in the case of Syneka Marketing, our key message is our expertise, the value of our strategies, and the fact that we can ultimately become your marketing department. Yeah, I've noticed that there's a question in regard to social media, so if you wouldn't mind perhaps reading out that question and we can lead some of the discussion around Neil Thomas's question.
Yeah, so Neil has asked a question. There are special challenges to marketing a service in regional or rural areas, for example, inertia and conservatism. Not all potential clients will use social media as a first choice resource. What is the best way to raise awareness of A, the service, and then B, that the business can be found on social media?
I often liken social media to, I guess, the way radio advertising reinforces a message. Traditionally, you'd have advertising in newspapers, television, and radio would serve as that reinforcement medium. And I very much see social media as reinforcing your key message and your branding. Ultimately, if someone doesn't know who you are, they're not going to be able to find you via social media. So it is important to establish, particularly in regional areas, to develop those other communication channels firstly. And that's when you can encourage them to link to you via social media, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever tools they wish to utilise, and use social media to reinforce those key messages. So in that case, you do want to raise awareness via more traditional forms of marketing. So it really depends on, I guess, the scope of your organisation, but it might be targeting key businesses within those areas, might be information sessions, it might be a range of leaflets, other materials that you can use to take to those businesses, or maybe face-to-face meetings. Looking at the elements of a marketing plan, and this is really looking at the nitty-gritty of what the marketing plan is going to set out to do. You start with the aim, and yeah, if there's any further questions, please do send them through the message box, and I'm happy to answer those as we go through. I always like, when I run face-to-face sessions, I always like to keep them fairly interactive, and obviously the technology is different here, but we can certainly try to keep it interactive by using that message box. So please do, any thoughts, any comments, any questions, send those through on the message box. So you start with the aim of your marketing plan, the purpose of the plan. What is it that you actually want to achieve? Underneath the central aim, you have the objectives. So the steps that are needed to achieve that aim. And looking at, of course, at how those objectives actually achieve that overarching aim. So once again, looking at Syneka Marketing, our aim is to increase the growth of our services. As I mentioned, this is really the beginning of the second year that we've been able to promote the business and look at a strategy of growth. So our objectives in looking at how we support that aim is social media. It is presentations like this, and it's looking at targeting key publications. Why are we doing this? To demonstrate our expertise, to demonstrate that we are specialists within those areas, and that helps reinforce our aim of ongoing growth. Underneath those objectives, you have the strategies. So the steps that are required to achieve those objectives. It's very important to define timeframes for those strategies, and if you're in a larger organisation, ultimately determining who is responsible. You do want to ensure that there is clear accountabilities so that you have some measurement of those strategies and are able to measure, firstly, the implementation, and secondly, the success. So in implementing our strategies, we identify presentation opportunities, and we identify, obviously, when those presentations are held. So this literally began with looking at opportunities for conferences, obviously webinars like we are this afternoon, and running our own series of workshops as well. So opportunities both externally as well as internally. And then looking at how you actually measure those results. So in our strategy, the key measurement is the number of presentations that we're conducting, as well as, of course, the feedback from those presentations. Last week I was in Warrnambool providing a social media and marketing workshop to community organisations in Victoria's southwest. A few weeks before that, I was in Melbourne's north providing a similar workshop. So it's not just the number of presentations, it's also the feedback from those presentations as well. And obviously in your organisations, it's a matter of determining how best to evaluate the performance of those strategies. We'll move on a bit now to look specifically at technology, given that there often is a lot of trepidation around the role of technology and looking at how technology can fulfil some of those marketing channels. So firstly, I want to impart that you should not view technology in isolation. Traditionally, there's been the view that websites are an IT exercise. We firmly believe that websites are a marketing tool. A website needs to promote your organisation, your brand, the key messages that you wish to promote. There's no point having a website just to tick off the box and say that you have a website. It's about having a website that promotes your organisation. Likewise, social media is a marketing exercise. There's very little point being on Facebook, Twitter, if you're not using it, and therefore if your fans or people that follow you aren't using it either. It's also worth bearing in mind that technology has also been actively used across all generations. One of the highest proportions of new Facebook accounts is the so-called baby boomer generation. So people aged 45, 50 plus, they're now the fastest growing segment of new Facebook accounts. And when you look at the way technology is adopted, that's often not unusual. When we look 5 years ago in the use of mobile phones and the way mobile phones have now been widely adopted, or even a decade ago in terms of email. It takes time for technology to permeate across, but as it does, it gets that wider adoption and that wider usage. And today, you'd hazard to find someone who doesn't have a mobile phone or doesn't have email access. The whole point of social media is the fact that it's word-of-mouth advertising. And when we look at how we find a plumber or an electrician, we often go to our friends, our colleagues, and ask their recommendations. Social media is the online equivalent of word-of-mouth. When someone shares your content, it's the equivalent of them saying, I endorse this, or I like this is what I think of it. And that often should be a positive. Obviously, there can be negatives in there as well, if their impression of your organisation was less than favourable. But if on a positive, it is the word-of-mouth endorsement. And that's where social media can be quite powerful in itself. But it's also worth remembering that email is very useful as well. And that's where you do want to ensure that email is still utilised as part of your communications. And Sarah, there's just some feedback that I noticed came through on the messaging system.
Yeah, so we just have a comment really from Hazel and a bit of a question. So if the demographic of those attending the Apple training sessions in Sydney is anything to go by, our presenter is spot on about who uses technology. So I think that's just referring to the demographics with that, Alex.
It's always good to get that feedback because often you see the statistics. It's always good then to see it in practice as well. And certainly in the social media workshops that I've been conducting for the not-for-profit sector in particular, there has been that wider spread of demographics than what you would have even seen, I'd say, 2 years ago. So as I mentioned, a website is one method of reaching stakeholders on the internet. Social media is another method. And like any tools, you want to use the strengths of those tools. So you'd use Facebook differently to how you'd potentially use Twitter. You want integration between those tools, but each of those tools does have their own unique strengths. Facebook allows you to build a community around a page. Twitter is more useful for those instant updates. And obviously a blog allows you to build an online community and have a fairly interactive type situation. So it is about utilising the strengths of each of those tools. And that's no different to how we should be using offline marketing tools. You know, a brochure would utilise quite differently to how we'd run information sessions. It is about ensuring that you do leverage those strengths. The great thing about social media is that you can integrate each of those tools. You can integrate those tools through your website and provide the ability to replicate that message. So what that means is that you're typing the message once and sending it through, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. And what that means is that instead of writing the same thing half a dozen times, you're able to write it once and send it through. And that saves a lot of time. You know, in my case, I'm fairly active on social media, both as in my council capacity and obviously in the business capacity. And if I had to write the same thing half a dozen times, it would be a very time-consuming exercise. But because you can integrate those tools, I can write the message once through my website, through the blog, and send that through our other communication channels. So what you want to do is send your website updates as a Facebook post, as a Twitter update, as an email update to your subscribers who choose to subscribe to you via email. You do want to save time, and you do want to try to reach your stakeholders as comprehensively as possible. It's very important to get the consistency, to get the branding right. And I've often seen many organisations that will agonise over the layouts, over the formats of marketing tools in the offline sense, so your brochures, leaflets, information packs, and yet on a website they'll often almost relegate that to a second-order issue. And I've actually seen examples of organisations that will have different branding, different logos on their social media channels, on their websites. And that's where you do want to ensure that consistency. Every time someone sees your organisation, you do want that consistent message. I want to look now at some of the specifics around each of those social media tools. So perhaps to kick off this part of the presentation, we might move to our second polling question. So over to you, Sarah.
Great. So we're just going to launch another polling question, and this time we're actually asking about your social media habits. So once again, if you can just select the answer most appropriate to you. We've got A, B, C, D, or none of the above. Just type in the messages box in the bottom right-hand corner if perhaps you use anything else apart from this, or maybe it's a whole combination of these social media tools. And Brianna's just asked a question, Alex. Are you referring to this in a personal sense or business sense?
I guess the sort of area where you'd most commonly use those tools. This is mainly about looking at, I guess, the tools people are familiar with. So if you've used them in a personal or business sense, just consider which one to use most often and feel perhaps more comfortable with as well. And obviously, yeah, there's the option of other tools as well.
Yeah, Alex, Toby's just also mentioned Ning. So is that something else that you have used in your experience?
That's right, and there's a number of other tools as well, including Pinterest, which is really great for products and services that are highly visible, highly visual in nature. So retail outlets, there's huge potential there for tools like Pinterest. And yeah, there's Ella that's mentioned Pinterest, Vimeo in terms of video as well. And yeah, Evernote is quite a useful tool as well. And obviously if you use them all, then that's great as well.
Just on Sam's question as well about using all of them to market, just probably put the one that you use the most of. And we've got the majority of responses now, so I'll share them with everybody.
Myself as well. Yep. It's great to see a fairly prominent usage of LinkedIn. I think one of the things LinkedIn has done really successfully is establish that niche around professional communications. I think we'll be discussing LinkedIn in a bit more detail shortly, but it demonstrates just how successful it's been in carving out a unique identity for itself. Let's look at each of the tools. And as I mentioned, social media is one potential marketing tool that you can use. There's others out there, and it's about looking at, firstly, if social media can be part of your marketing mix, and secondly, how best to use it. So Facebook, utilised by 10.6 million Australians, almost half of our population. Facebook is often used to build that online community. So it's about promoting events. This webinar, for example, we promoted through Facebook events, utilising announcements as well, and utilising that sense of an online community. So people that connect to your Facebook page. If you've used Facebook in an individual capacity, you'll be obviously familiar with people that are your friends on Facebook. The comparison for pages is liking. So someone would like your Facebook page. Once they like that page, they receive the updates from that page. And organisations can have branding on those pages. If you've used Facebook in an individual capacity, you'll be familiar with the Facebook timeline. The timeline is now actually being rolled out to pages as well. And that actually alters, gone are the days of those custom Facebook branded pages. It's now about branding your timeline page to reinforce your organisation. And obviously the address there for Facebook. There's some other demographics in terms of Facebook usage. As I mentioned, and as we've discussed, Facebook in particular is being adopted by a number of different demographics and across the age spectrum. Looking at Twitter, 2.5 million Australians are on Twitter. Victorian, I believe this is largely due to population figures, but Victoria is obviously second in terms of the location of Twitter accounts. Twitter is great for those quick announcements. The other great thing about Twitter is that you can feed into Facebook. So you can send an update via Twitter and have that replicated through Facebook. One of the other elements of Twitter, and to encourage discussion, is the use of hashtags. And a hashtag is basically the hash symbol in front of a common phrase. So often when I'm discussing marketing, for example, on Twitter, I'll do the hash and marketing. What that means is that it allows you to build up that tag as something that's searchable through Twitter. But you can also develop your own hashtags. And quite a number of organisations now have communications via Twitter, what's known as a tweet chat. Basically, the conversation takes place via Twitter, and the hashtag links it together. For not-for-profits out there, one of those tweet chats is the Connecting Up tweet chats held every fortnight on a Wednesday afternoon. And the hashtag there is NPAU. So they know, and when you're conversing via Twitter, you know that everyone that's using that hashtag is part of that conversation. So it helps you follow key themes and link up relevant topics. Looking at LinkedIn, LinkedIn now has 3 million Australians. In fact, last week when I provided that presentation in Warrnambool, that was the morning when LinkedIn apparently crossed the threshold into 3 million Australians. When you look at a working population the size of Australia, which I believe is around that sort of 10, 11 million mark, 3 million is actually quite a high figure, given that you look at LinkedIn being that professional network. So LinkedIn is about basically professional to professional type connections. It's about business to business type discussions. It's about people in their roles, in their organisations, making connections. LinkedIn in particular can be quite useful in the not-for-profit sense in developing or conversing with prospective business partners. And in the business world, it can be quite useful in business-to-business type organisations. So we use LinkedIn quite extensively when we work with other businesses and discussing topics that are quite relevant to the needs of other businesses. Like each of these tools, LinkedIn can be integrated with Twitter, and Twitter, of course, can be integrated with Facebook. So you get a bit of a network occurring with each of those tools. YouTube being the next tool that we're looking at, and as we've seen through the discussion, there are a number of different tools available. YouTube is one of those video tools. There's Vimeo. There's quite a number of other tools that are available. Daily Motion, number of channels where you can actually upload videos. It was actually quite difficult to retrieve up-to-date figures on YouTube, but basically 48 hours of video are apparently updated every minute. And 3% of those videos come from an Australian source. And 3 billion videos are viewed on a daily basis. So it's a medium that does allow you to connect to people via video. What I think is really important with YouTube, however, is the fact it is the second biggest search engine. So after people go to Google, which is Australia's most popular search engine, the next place people use to find content is YouTube. And it's perhaps no surprise then that YouTube is actually owned by Google. YouTube's also particularly important, as is Google's other products, in looking at search engine optimization. So that's looking at how you can actually look at boosting the results of your page in a search engine. And there was data research compiled just last year looking at how often people delve past the first page on Google. And about 90% of people stop at the first page of search results. And this is where utilising Google's other tools can help in building up your relevancy in those search terms. Looking at blogging now as a tool, and quite a number of organisations, I believe, would be familiar with the term blogging. And basically a blog is a website that contains regularly updated posts. So in a business or a community context, this can include items like your newsletter, media releases, advice and information that you can distribute to people on your blog. A blog tends to be more conversational in nature, so you'd have your main content of your website, and then the blog being the platform that encourages that dialogue. Where a blog works particularly well is when it's integrated in the rest of your website. Someone should be able to navigate through your website and have the same look and feel and have the same consistency. The minute you provide a different user experience, it can be quite jarring for someone who's visiting a site. Bearing in mind that on average, when someone comes to a website, they'll spend about 30 seconds before they'll click somewhere else. So if they don't find what they need in that 30 seconds, they'll likely go elsewhere. And if they're spending time trying to go from a website to a blog that looks completely different, that's the 30 seconds gone. The other great thing about a blog is that it can integrate with social media. And there's tools like WordPress, which can build a website and incorporate the blogging platform. Many organisations often say, well, where do we get content from our blogs? And often newsletters are one of the most common sources of information, particularly used by not-for-profit organisations to communicate to their stakeholders. One of the key items of advice I provide is break down that newsletter into individual articles and put those individual articles as blog posts. Also bearing in mind that search engines, at a fundamental level, look at the number of times that you include a key term. So a newsletter article will tend to repeat your sort of key statements a number of different times. And that's where it can also help with search engine results as well. As I mentioned, and I've highlighted a few times, there is still a clear role for email. And there's a lot of debate as to whether email is a social media tool. My view is that if it's used to encourage communication, encourage dialogue, it is part of your social media platform. And you look at the metrics around the coverage of email versus other social media tools. Email still dwarfs everyone else in comparison. You look at the number of people that have email addresses versus those that even have Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, some of the more popular tools, and email is still a very common form of communication and very highly utilised. It's worth looking at some of the stats. And often, when you want to encourage people to share information, it's as simple as asking them. So if you do have an email newsletter, ask them to share that content onto others that may be interested. Ask them to forward that email to people that might be interested, but also to link it on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or other tools. It's about leveraging each of those tools to encourage some of that word-of-mouth advertising that we discussed earlier. The great thing about the internet is the fact that your outcomes are very highly measurable. So you can look at actually measuring those results and determining whether it's been successful. So you want to look at what you want to achieve from your internet presence. Is it contacting prospective customers? Is it promoting sales? Is it readership of your newsletter, of your blog? If you're a not-for-profit organisation, is it donations to your cause? Is it encouraging volunteer participation? The great thing is the internet is measurable. You can get statistics on how many people are not only visiting your website, but also then where they click and how they actually navigate through your site. And that's particularly important. Say if you're a community organisation that wants to encourage donations, you can measure whether, firstly, people are going to your website, second, measure whether they're going to the donation section, and thirdly, measure whether they're actually completing the transaction. And at each of those three steps, you can gauge where, if donations aren't coming through, where things might be falling down. So in that example, if they're going through to the donation page, but then not actually making a donation, it could be that your key messages need to be refined. Or it could be the process of making donations is far too complex. It allows you, with that detail, to look at how you can improve those results. And likewise, on Facebook and Twitter, you can measure the people that like you, the people that follow you, but also the fact that you can measure how much of your content is being shared. And likewise with email, there's tools available where you can actually measure the amount of click-throughs on your emails. So when you send out an email campaign, you can measure who opens the email and who actually clicks on the links in those emails as well. So it allows you to build up a fairly comprehensive package of data that can be analysed so that you can determine the effectiveness of your communications and marketing in the online world. We're at the conclusion of today's presentation. I do want to touch on some of the key aspects, and then we can open up the message box once again and look at any questions that may have raised as we went through. So you do want to develop a marketing plan. You want to identify what you want to achieve, those objectives. Yes, and PowerPoint slides, thanks Rick, we can make available after the presentation. If you provide me with your details, I can certainly follow those up, and Sarah will be sending details as well. So you want to identify what you want to achieve in your marketing plan. You want to start with that aim that looks at the key area that you want to focus on, the objectives that support that aim, the strategies underneath to achieve those objectives. You want to ensure that there's key metrics as well so that you can measure the success of those objectives. It's very important that you use the tools that are right for you. Social media is one of those tools. It's about looking at how social media is part of your mix of how you market your organisation. And unfortunately, there's quite a few social media consultants that will often say, forget about everything else and just focus solely on social media. And in our view, that's quite an incorrect notion. You know, you wouldn't forget about other marketing tools and just promote your organisation via leaflets. You wouldn't drop your leaflets, drop brochures and drop any other promotional tool and just focus on information sessions. It's about using the tools that are right for your business or the tools that are right for your organisation. And it's ultimately a mix of those tools where you get results. It's a mix of tools that reinforce those key messages. The standard rule of thumb in marketing is that someone needs a number of exposures before they react to something. So social media, Facebook might be one of those exposures. Twitter might be a number of exposures. The rule of thumb being it generally takes about 5 to 7 exposures before someone may take the action that you want to encourage. You know, a brochure that someone received in the mail might be a third example of that exposure. It's about utilising those tools so that they work together. And ensuring, of course, that your key messages are consistent. If you have a brochure that looks entirely different to your Facebook page, to your website, it's going to make it a lot more difficult to actually encourage that person to take the next step, whether it be a donation, whether it be a purchase of your product, whether it be becoming a volunteer, whether it be being engaged in your organisation. That consistency is critical. And that's where, once again, we want to look at being able to replicate those messages. Social media is great in that respect, where it does allow you to write the message once and spread that message through your social media platforms. So you can write one message on your blog, send that through to Facebook, send that through to Twitter, to LinkedIn, to any other network that you might be involved in. And that replication is critical. And that's no different to the offline world, where if you're promoting events, you'll have that initial broadcast of your events. And one of the examples we're looking at is the launch of a new building, which I'm organising on behalf of an organisation next month. We're going to have the initial invitations, then we'll have follow-up invitations as well. And for the key VIPs, the ones that we want there for the launch to be successful, well, they'll receive telephone calls as well and personalised correspondence. So it is about reinforcing your key messages. That does bring us to the end of today's presentation. Do hope that you have found the presentation useful. Certainly happy to provide the PowerPoint slides and the workshops following the presentation. And if there is any further questions, and I often realise it's hard to come up with the questions during the allotted time, but if there is other questions, my contact details are available. So some of the next steps, do subscribe to our blog. We do have a New Year marketing package available for businesses that are looking at the marketing planning process. We have specific products available for small businesses as well as not-for-profit organisations. Certainly happy to provide a discount to people that did participate in today's presentation. So do stay engaged with Syneka Marketing, and we're certainly happy to discuss your marketing needs in further detail. And my contact details are there. So if anyone does come up with a question following this presentation, shoot me an email, connect to me via social media. Certainly happy to answer those questions. Sarah, any questions in the interim?
No, that's great. I personally would like to thank you, Alex, on behalf of Redback for today's webinar. Very insightful. Also, thank you to everyone who joined. We really, really think these webinars are great, and the more you attend, the more we're actually going to increase them, I guess. And for those of you who do, when you leave the webinar, you will actually be redirected to an exit survey. Once you complete this, we will actually send you an email within 48 hours. And this email will contain a recording of the webinar, a copy of the PowerPoint slides, links to any further details for Alex, and also the document that Alex provided at the beginning of the webinar. So thanks once again for joining. We hope to see you at future webinars, and I'd like to hand it over to Alex for closing comments.
Thank you. So either today's presentation was abundantly clear or surprisingly confusing. Hopefully it was the first, but if there are questions down the track, please do let me know. Thank you to each and every one of you for participating in today's webinar. If you do know of people that would have liked to attend but were unable to do so, as Sarah mentioned, the webinar, the presentation will be available. So certainly looking at, spread the word in today's webinar, and certainly happy to make those slides available and the presentation.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.